There are 5 levels of dark personality, and most men live blind at the first. They walk through life smiling, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, never realizing that beneath every glance, every nod, every whispered congratulations, there is a quiet shadow at work. Those who ascend through these levels learn to see what others cannot, the currents of envy, the masks of charm, the silences that conceal daggers. The masses remain chained in innocence, but those who rise through shadow and cunning command entire worlds that the blind never know exist. And it all begins here, at the first level, the shadowed self. The shadowed self is subtle, almost imperceptible, because it wears the costume of normalcy. This is the colleague who claps when you win the award, but feels their chest burn with contempt. This is the sibling who smiles at your triumph, but carries the bitter wish that you stumble. It is the quiet friend who asks you questions, not out of care, but out of hunger for your weakness. They rarely confront, never declare, and yet their envy drips into every gesture, every silence, every compliment that carries a hidden weight. The shadowed self thrives in these quiet hypocrisies, never exposing its hand, always cloaking resentment behind civility. You've seen it, the one who tells you they're happy for your new relationship, but the smirk in their eyes betrays disappointment. The classmate who asks about your grade with friendly curiosity, only to feel a rush of satisfaction when yours is lower than theirs. The co-worker who praises your leadership in the meeting, then later whispers to the boss about your flaws. None of these betrayals are open, none of them bloody, but every one of them is poison, laid slowly into the well of your trust. Most people dismiss it as nothing. They tell themselves, he's a good guy, she's family. They wouldn't do that. But this is where blindness becomes slavery. Understand this. Envy does not need violence to destroy. It needs only patience. Silent resentment corrodes loyalty, sabotages reputations, fractures alliances. A single shadowed self in your circle is like a leak in a fortress wall. You do not notice it day by day until the whole structure is compromised. And here lies the danger. Most men do not confront it, because to name it aloud feels paranoid, impolite, extreme, so they ignore the shadow and feed it instead. They overshare with the friend who envies them. They lean on the relative who resents them. They seek comfort in the colleague who secretly undermines them. They confuse politeness with allegiance, and in that confusion, the shadowed self grows fat and bold. Envy is the foundation of all higher darkness. Before a man becomes a deceiver, before he becomes a predator, before he crowns himself tyrant, before he dissolves into phantom, he begins here, in this quiet garden of hidden grudges. Every tyrant once smiled while envying another. Every predator once clenched his teeth in silence while pretending to cheer. The shadowed self is not yet powerful enough to rule, but it is the seed. If ignored, if unrecognized, it evolves. This is why most men are undone, not by their declared enemies, but by the ones who sat at their table, smiled at their victories, and applauded their speeches. Do not imagine the shadowed self lives only in others. It lives in you. Think of the moment you saw a rival win what you thought was yours. Did you feel uncut joy or a flash of resentment hidden beneath your applause? Did you ever nod along with a friend's story while secretly hoping it would collapse? These small flickers of envy are the birth of darkness within you. They are proof that the shadow is not an external threat alone, but an inner one. And until you recognize it, until you stare it down and admit it, you remain vulnerable not just to others' shadows, but to your own. This is why the first level is the most dangerous, because it is invisible by design. The schemer exposes himself through lies, the predator through cruelty, the tyrant through domination, the phantom through absence. But the shadowed self remains disguised in smiles and silence. It is the soil in which all darker forms of power grow, the hidden tension behind the mask of friendship, the crack beneath the polished surface of family, the secret waiting at the back of every crowd that claps for you. So I ask you, when you look at the people who smile at you, are they truly with you, or are they simply waiting for your back to turn? The second level is where the mask is no longer enough. The quiet envy of the shadowed self begins to sharpen into deliberate action, and from that shadow is born the schemer. Unlike the first level, where resentment festers in silence, the schemer takes the next step, weaponizing charm, twisting trust, bending perception until lies are mistaken for loyalty. If the shadowed self is soil, then the schemer is the seedling that pushes through, hungry for light, willing to bend and coil to reach its goal. And you will know them not by their smiles, but by the way their words subtly change the structure of your world. The schemer understands something the shadowed self never could, that deception is more powerful than truth when wielded with skill. They study you, your weaknesses, your desires, your insecurities, and then they craft words like poison-coated daggers. They do not need brute force, nor do they need to show contempt. Instead, they present themselves as allies, confidants, lovers even, all while planting small distortions in your mind. A schemer will say, "I only want the best for you," even as they guide you toward decisions that serve their own interest. They will assure you of loyalty, even as they sow subtle doubts between you and your allies. They will nod in agreement as they replace your version of reality with theirs. Think of the friend who always has a story that makes them appear slightly superior, as though life bends more in their favor. Consider the colleague who flatters you in private but subtly shifts the narrative in meetings to claim credit for your work. Think of the lover who says, "I trust you completely," while planting seeds of suspicion about your closest companions. These are not accidents. They are calculated performances, crafted to make you rely more on the schemer, to see them as the one anchor in a sea of confusion. And the more you rely on them, the deeper their hooks sink into your life. The schemer thrives on ambiguity. They never show you the dagger, they hand you the sheath and tell you it's empty. They will tell one truth, one lie, and one half-truth, weaving them into a single thread so tightly that you cannot tell which strand holds. By the time you notice the pattern, it is too late. You have already spoken your secrets into their waiting ear. You have already defended them against others. You have already built a cage with your own words, and they hold the key. Their genius is not in raw power, but in making you betray yourself, in convincing you to walk willingly into their designs. And yet the most dangerous quality of the schemer is not what they say, but how they appear. They appear indispensable. You will believe they are the only one who truly understands you. They make themselves the bridge between you and others, so that every conversation must pass through their hands, every decision their filter, every bond their mediation. In this way, they slowly strip you of independence. You become entangled in their narrative, unable to act without consulting them, unable to see the world without their distortions clouding your vision. It is not force that enslaves you here, it is reliance. Understand this, the schemer does not destroy you all at once. That is the predator's task. The schemer corrodes you in increments, like a whisper in your ear that grows louder over time. By the moment you realize the web has been spun, you are already inside it. And by then, even if you want to escape, you fear what leaving them might expose. For if they can lie for you, they can lie against you. If they can weave illusions that protect you, they can weave illusions that bury you. Their silence becomes your prison. So look again at the people you trust most. Ask yourself, do they truly serve you, or do they serve themselves through you? And if every word they've ever spoken was a mask, how much of your life belongs to them already? The third level is where shadows shed their subtlety and lies shed their charm. Here stands the predator. Unlike the schemer, who thrives in deception, the predator hungers for open opportunity. They no longer waste time with careful webs or delicate illusions. They watch, they wait, and when the moment comes, they strike with precision. The predator is ruthless, pragmatic, and utterly indifferent to the wreckage they leave behind. If the shadowed self resents you, if the schemer manipulates you, the predator consumes you. And most terrifying of all, they will call it nothing more than the natural order of things. The predator sees people not as companions, but as resources. They are not distracted by envy, nor burdened by guilt. They view others as prey to be hunted, assets to be drained, ladders to be climbed. Your talent is not admirable to them, it is useful. Your loyalty is not valued, it is exploitable. Your weakness is not a flaw, they see it as their opening, and they will exploit it without hesitation. Where the schemer whispers, the predator takes. Where the schemer plots slowly, the predator cuts swiftly. They live by a single creed: advantage belongs to the one bold enough to seize it. You have seen predators in the world: the business partner who drains a venture dry and then vanishes. The lover who feeds on your devotion until nothing remains, only to abandon you when you are no longer of use. The leader who rewards loyalty not with gratitude, but with exploitation, squeezing every ounce of effort from his followers before discarding them like broken tools. These are not acts of malice, not in their eyes. They see them as strategy. To the predator, your downfall is not betrayal, it is survival. And here lies their brilliance. Unlike the schemer, who must conceal their lies, the predator often shows their hand. They are open about their appetite, sometimes even proud of it. They will tell you they are ruthless, and you will laugh, mistaking honesty for harmlessness. They will warn you they are ambitious, and you will take it as confidence. They will show you their teeth, and you will think it a smile. By the time you realize the truth, you are already bleeding. The predator's greatest disguise is not deception, but normalization. They make you believe exploitation is just the way the world works. What makes the predator more dangerous than the schemer is speed. The schemer invests time to manipulate, but the predator seizes in an instant. They are opportunists who live for weakness. The moment you slip, the moment you falter, they are there, ready to take what you thought was secure. A missed opportunity, a lapse in vigilance, a single misplaced trust, that is all they need. And once they strike, there is no undoing it. You cannot recover what they take, because they do not return. They consume and move on, leaving you staring at the wreckage of your own carelessness. Understand this truth. The predator does not need to be everywhere. They only need to be near you once. A single betrayal from a predator can ruin what you spent years building. A single strike can topple alliances, businesses, families, entire empires. They are not concerned with loyalty, only leverage. And when you no longer offer leverage, you are no longer seen at all. So ask yourself, when someone in your circle praises your strength, do they truly admire it, or are they waiting for the day it falters so they can devour the pieces you leave behind? The fourth level is where hunger evolves into rule, where appetite transforms into dominion. Here stands the tyrant. If the predator seizes what it wants and moves on, the tyrant remains, enthroning themselves above others, demanding obedience, feeding not only on resources but on submission itself. The tyrant is no longer satisfied with moments of advantage. They seek permanence. They crave a kingdom of fear, a hierarchy where their word becomes law, where no one dares to question, and where even silence bends under their weight. To encounter a tyrant is to live beneath a storm that never ends, a power that feeds endlessly on your trembling compliance. The tyrant operates differently from the predator. The predator exploits opportunity when it arises. The tyrant manufactures it. They engineer systems where your survival depends on their favor, where every choice you make must orbit their authority. They do not merely strike once and vanish. They anchor themselves into your life so deeply that you cannot imagine a world without them. They force you into a reality where every breath you take feels permitted only by their will. And this is their most terrifying quality. They enslave not only your actions but your imagination. Think of the boss who builds an empire not on talent but on intimidation, ruling meetings with silence so thick no one dares to dissent. Think of the patriarch who enforces loyalty not through love but through fear of exile, teaching children and grandchildren that questioning him means banishment. Think of the ruler who allows his people just enough bread to keep them alive, but never enough to keep them free. The tyrant does not hide behind masks or whispers. They wield fear openly, as if it were a crown, and those beneath them learn quickly that survival means obedience, even if obedience kills the soul. The genius of the tyrant is that they do not need to deceive. They need only to demonstrate. A single act of cruelty displayed in public, a single punishment carried out without mercy, a single example made of one defiant soul, and suddenly everyone else falls silent. Their power does not rest on constant enforcement, but on the memory of enforcement. Once fear is instilled, it perpetuates itself. People police their own thoughts, betray their own allies, sabotage themselves, all to avoid the wrath of the tyrant. It is the most efficient system of control, terror that enforces itself. But do not confuse the tyrant with strength. Tyranny is not true power. It is dependence on fear. The tyrant is forever haunted by paranoia, for they know that the loyalty they command is hollow, that beneath the bowed heads lies seething hatred. They live in palaces but sleep like hunted men, surrounded by guards, yet never safe. And yet they endure, because fear is stronger than love in the short term, and most men are too weak to risk rebellion. The tyrant thrives not because they are invincible, but because the world is filled with cowards who would rather live on their knees than die on their feet. This is why the tyrant is both terrifying and pathetic. Terrifying, because under their reign, entire generations can forget what freedom feels like. Pathetic, because they rule only so long as fear outweighs courage. And history teaches us this. Every tyrant believes their rule eternal, yet every tyrant falls, not because their enemies grow strong, but because their fear eventually devours them from within. The same iron fist that keeps others silent becomes the prison that isolates them until they rule nothing but shadows. So look closely at the people who demand your obedience. Are they leading you, or are they merely feeding on your fear? And when they strip you of choice, do you mistake that for strength, or do you see the trembling weakness that hides behind their crown? The fifth level is the most elusive, the most unnerving, the one that does not roar, does not strike, does not command openly. It is the phantom. Unlike the tyrant who builds thrones of fear, the phantom rules without being seen. Their strength lies in invisibility, in the fact that you rarely know they exist until their will has already shaped your world. They are not bound by the envy of the shadowed self, the lies of the schemer, the hunger of the predator, or even the dominance of the tyrant. They transcend these, weaving power not with presence but with absence. To face a phantom is to face a force that governs you without ever stepping into the light. The phantom understands the purest form of control, influence without exposure. While others chase recognition, they chase silence. They hide their hand so completely that when events unfold, people assume it was fate, chance, or their own choice. But it was never theirs. It was guided, engineered, set in motion by someone they will never see. The phantom knows that true power is not in being feared or loved. It is in being obeyed without ever being named. That is why you rarely find them on the throne. They sit behind it, whispering into the ears of rulers, pulling strings that even the tyrant himself believes are his own decisions. You have seen glimpses of phantoms if you look closely enough. The advisor who survives every regime change, whispering into the ear of whoever wears the crown. The business partner who never takes the title of CEO, but every policy, every deal, somehow aligns with his hidden interests. The relative who seems unremarkable, but whose quiet manipulations dictate the alliances, rivalries, and inheritances of the entire family. These are not coincidences. These are deliberate shadows, individuals who understood long ago that exposure is vulnerability, and visibility is death. The phantom feeds on the blind need of others to assign power to faces. People fear the tyrant because they can see him. People resent the predator because they feel his strike. But who do you fear when you cannot identify the source? Who do you resent when you cannot see the hand that pushed the stone? That is the brilliance of the phantom. They escape blame because no one suspects them. They escape revolt because no one sees them as rulers. And so, while tyrants fall and predators are hunted, phantoms endure because no one knows where to aim the dagger. Their methods are delicate but devastating. They place men in conflict without ever lifting a weapon. They build empires without ever claiming them. They create fear without ever being named the source. They do not need loyalty, they engineer dependency. Everyone around them moves, speaks, decides, without realizing their strings are being pulled by an invisible hand. And when someone begins to suspect, the phantom has already moved 3 steps away, leaving only illusions behind. Confronting them is like grasping smoke. You close your fist and find nothing there. What makes them most terrifying is not just their skill, but the doubt they leave in your mind. At least with the tyrant, you know who rules you. With the predator, you know who has struck. But with the phantom, you never know if the choice you just made was yours, or if it was planted in your head weeks ago by someone you thought harmless. You begin to question every alliance, every decision, every thought. You wonder if the betrayals in your life were accidents or orchestrations. And in that paranoia, the phantom reigns supreme. So ask yourself, when you look at the people in your circle, when you think of the ones who seem quiet, unthreatening, even invisible, are you certain they are as powerless as they appear? Or are you already living inside their design, mistaking their silence for absence, while every step you take has already been decided by them? If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows this truth. Dark personalities are not accidents, they are evolutions. Each type is a mask, a weapon, a stage of power. Some remain in resentment, others rise to domination, and a few disappear into invisibility. Now tell me in the comments, which type are you, and which type are you becoming? If this message touched you, if it made sense, write in the comments, I know my type. Let's see how many here are truly ready to face the level they stand in. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important. much more than you imagine. See you there.